for having me. Can you hear that okay? My name is Brandon Nelson, and it was my name, it is my name on the Guinness certificate, but this was very much a community effort. And a lot of you who were there with me during the world record paddle are here in this room tonight. Peter Marcus, I see over there. My wife and family, my two kids there, they were every much as part of this as I was. And Michael Medler, Tom Brewster from Wilson Engineering, there were hundreds of people involved. And I think some of the photos that I'm going to share with you tonight will help convey that story. But what do you think? There we go. Okay. To get started, I want to ask, do we have any sea kayakers in the room tonight? Excellent. Anybody done ski to sea? Yep. All right. We're going to use that ski to sea 5-mile distance as context to get a picture of what this world record was. Sean Sullivan, another one right there. Hi, Sean. But I want to invite you. I'm going to try to put you in the journey that I went through, and I want one volunteer. What's your name? Chris. You said you were a kayaker? So you're going to be a bit of a star tonight, all right? But all of you who are kayakers or who could ever just try to put yourself in this story with me a little bit. What we're going to do is, it's a gorgeous morning in August in the summer. It's beautiful, it's still, the water's calm. It's exactly what you want for what you're about to attempt. So I want you to picture yourself, and I'm going to use some pictures of the bay and the sound to give context to the distance, although you know this record was set on Lake Padden, just a few miles up the road here. But this will help us see the distance a little bit. So you're slipping into your kayak, and you put it on Cornwall Beach, or right in front of Woods on Boulevard Park, and you start off, you just cruise across the bay, and you're paddling at 82 strokes a minute, about 750 strokes a mile. You've got a drink tube that comes up to your mouth, so you don't have to stop paddling to drink. You just take a sip, you keep moving. You got a high-performance drink mix in this drink bladder, so you're fueling your muscles with exactly what you need. You've tested this all before. It works perfectly, and you're cruising, okay? We're going to do you one better, though. We're going to put you in an ocean racing kayak called a surf ski. It's so much more efficient for high speed, but there's a trade-off in that it's tippy. So that's going to come into play as the day and night roll on, okay? We have a saying that surf skis are stable like a unicycle is stable. It's paddle or balance. That's where you get the stability from. Okay, so you have cruised along the south side of Lummi Island, and now you have crossed over past Orcas Island, and you're down now between Lopez and Shaw, exactly, okay? As you get into this section in here, your legs, your thighs are starting to cramp because you're in a fixed position in a hard molded seat, and your legs are together like this. You can't really spread them out. So it's starting to cramp on your thighs, but you've been doing this for so long, you're wondering, that's not quite right. That's not quite right. You're not putting it together because you're just cranking. You're going faster speed than 90% of the ski-to-sea racers on that 5-mile course. And now you've been going for several hours. So you're just not quite putting it all together just yet. Let's go back to the boat for a second. A big part of the stability of a surf ski comes from the rudder. It's like a wing that sticks down into the water, and it keeps the boat from rolling side to side. It gives it a lot of stability. And you steer it with your feet on the pedals. So all your energy can go into that forward stroke. Except to minimize drag, you've outfitted the boat with a credit card size rudder. So there's really no help against that rolling. It's really like that unicycle we talked about. But you've made it this far, and now you're going to really open up and put some distance under you. You're going to paddle all the way from Bellingham across the San Juans to Victoria on the south end of Vancouver Island. That's it, Jazzy. The drink mix that you've been using and that's been causing the cramps, what's happening is it's too rich. There's not enough water content to the mix, and so it's pulling the water from your muscles and from your blood and everything else. It's not working. You're cramping because your electrolytes are getting out of balance. This was me on this big day. By the time you round the south end of San Juan Island and start making your way towards Victoria, your stomach will not keep this stuff in it anymore, and you start to puke. And all this important food and water that you've been taking in is coming out, but you can't stop paddling. You keep paddling, and you're paddling, and you're all over your lap and everything else, but don't stop. That's the key. Keep going. Keep going. So you've crossed all the way over to Victoria at this point. Now keep in mind, this is on Lake Padden, and to achieve that distance, you're doing a 1 3/4 mile loop around the outside of Padden. The reason you chose this is because it's protected, it has trails and access all the way around, and your support crew can set up on the swim beach. And every 2 hours on that crossing over to Victoria, you stopped to eat and for someone else to switch out your drink bladder. You stop for about 90 seconds, and then you get back in and keep going. Through every moment from the first stroke you took is a big red digital clock sitting up on shore, and it runs continuously. And no matter how bad you feel, no matter the cramps, no matter the puking or anything else, it keeps running. Because what you're doing is you're going for the ultimate distance in 24 hours. This clock is always on your mind. It's like a drum. Every second, it's beating and it's running forward. What this is called is ultra. We just heard Heather talk about it. It's going way further than what is reasonable. And in this day, it's taking a trip that would be, for good sea kayakers, a 4-day camping sea kayak trip, and you've compressed it into part of 1 day. Ultra is unique in that, I was thinking the other day, how do I make an analogy? Imagine you're wet, you're sweaty, you're hot, you've got heat and all these things, and you rub your hand on your arm. And you rub it just once and it doesn't feel like much, but you feel the little hairs pull and the fibers pull a little bit and you feel a little bit of heat. Now multiply that by 82 times a minute, and then 750 times, and then 10,000 times rubbing back and forth. Every seam in your clothing is important. Everything you put into your mouth is important, and it can be the right thing or the wrong thing. But no matter what, the clock never stops, and you've just got to keep going. So I had a support crew that every 2 hours I would stop, and they had everything that I had tested in the past and would use for food. Scrambled eggs, sweet potatoes. I was trying to eat mostly whole foods. In my drink bladder, I had Hammer products, high performance, high electrolyte type stuff. And the key is, too, of all the races we've done, the Yukon River Quest and everything else, no matter what happens, you've got to keep eating and drinking. The people that drop out of these races and can't go on is that they stop, they get off, they stop being thirsty, or they start to puke, or their guts start to hurt, and they stop bringing it in. You can't. You've got to keep bringing that nutrition in. Day and night, day and night. Now, I mentioned the clothing and how important that can be and everything else. Here's a picture of what happens when you've been rotating in that seat. This is taken from a 10-hour test paddle that I did 3 weeks before I tried the 24-hour world record. And the pain of that kind of chafe, only 10 hours in, when I got done with this paddle, I took this shot and I emailed it to my buddy Carlos Dinares, who's standing right back there. He's an Olympic rowing coach. Carlos, put your hand up. Carlos is the kind of guy who has on his wall in his gym, pain is temporary, quitting is forever. And so I texted him to Carlos and I said, Carlos, this is after only 10 hours. I've got to go 24 if I'm going to set the world record. What do you think? And Carlos is from Spain. He says, hey, Brandon, you know the story of this boy who hiked in the desert, in the Utah desert, in a slot canyon. And he trapped his arm between the wall with a boulder. And I think, and my mind's going, oh, cool, Carlos must know of a certain salve that this kid uses to put on the stump of his arm. And I said, yeah, of course, Aaron Ralston. I've heard about the guy. He said, when he could take it no more, he pulled out his knife and he thrust it into his arm, and he twisted it, and he break his bone, and he walk out to freedom. He said, Brandon, When you can take the pain no more, you should ask someone on the shore, hey, who has a knife that I can cut the flesh off my backside and keep going? He said, Brando, you think you're going to give a world record out to just anyone? Come on, man. What kind of athlete are you? I said, Carlos, I will give you $10,000 to stand on the side of Lake Patton and yell that every time I go around, no matter what happens. He said, I'm going to be the world championships in Korea. But I'm hurting this night, and so I need some sympathy. So I call my wife next, and I send her the picture. And Heather, at the time, the day I did the 10-hour test battle, she's down in San Francisco Bay doing the national championship surf ski races on the podium, third place. Right, that night. And I said, Heather, look at this. This is only 10 hours. What am I going to do? And she says, well, when does it hurt? And I said, well, every 2 hours I would take a 60-second break, and I would get some food and get back in the boat. And then, especially when I was starting again, it would hurt. And Heather says, well, then don't stop. And that's that is the key. The Carloses and the Heathers, it's the key that I surround myself with those type of people to do this. You can't have, oh, honey, let's just pull over now and take a break. You can't do that for a 24-hour world record. So the question is, we understand the distance, the context of the distance now, and we understand some of the realities of ultra. Ultra is suffering. You know that when you're going into it. I guarantee you Heather knew that. I knew it. But why would I do this? That's my mom. And there's no story about this world record without my mom. Back in 2005, December 26th, we got a phone call. My mom and dad were in the hospital. They thought she had pneumonia, but she had stage 4 terminal cancer, ovarian cancer. And they gave her a few months to live. And I promised my mom, I went down there and I promised her what I could give her to honor her. She was a hospice caregiver. She loved hospice. She loved giving her life to hospice. I said, Mom, I'm going to set a world record in your honor, and we're going to raise money for hospice, and we're going to raise awareness for the early detection of ovarian cancer. And that's the least I can do. And so I flew back home and I continued my training, and we put this project together called Kayak for Care. A lot of you know about that because I see a lot of faces that were involved in that project back in 2006. And the day before I was going to make that attempt, we were out measuring the course with a surveyor, and my phone rings, and it's my dad, and he says, your mom is not going to make it another day. And I was going to go the next day. So I dropped what I was doing, and I flew down to Arizona, and I was with her when she died. And we took care of her stuff, and we had a service for her, and I came home, and I got back into shape, and about 3 weeks later, I got onto Lake Whatcom, and I had said all along, the record at the time was 137 miles, and I had set a goal of 144 miles. And we had sold buoys to go on the course, and we raised almost $20,000 for hospice in Whatcom County here and in California where my brother lives. Thank you. Thank you. And I did the paddle, and we had our share of troubles, and my original boat broke, and I got into a different one, and I got back in the race boat 10 hours later, but the same thing, we pushed through it. And in the end, I had done 147 miles and beat the current recorded world record by 10 miles. And then several days later, found out that a kayaker in California had gone 150 miles 3 days before and watched our project secretly and then didn't announce it until after we had gone. And, you know, that's the breaks. But it left my promise to my mom unfulfilled. And it lit something inside me that it would take 7 years of that burning inside me. I had kids. I became a realtor and got busy with work, and I never felt the type of comfort in a kayak or a surf ski that I needed to feel to know I could go out there and do another 24 hours. And so I just backburnered it. And then just this last spring, a new surf ski came out. I took it on one test paddle. I knew it was the boat I needed to do the world record, and so I started training up again. But back to this. Chris, you are all the way in Victoria now, right? You have done, my bad. You have done laps around Lake Padden now for hours and hours and hours. And everything you've done has been judged. Every time you pass by the beach, it's been recorded because Guinness has very stringent standards of how it has to be done. And this is to set a Guinness World Record, not just a personal best or anything else. So we've got judges always on staff. They're recording. Everything's being video recorded. Everything's being photographed in the day and in the night. You've made it to Victoria. You've got a 90-second rest. And now we need you to get back in the boat. And we need you to go back to Bellingham. Okay? You focus up. The clock never stops. You start paddling. Yep. And you crank it. And no matter what, as the day goes on, your crew is always there. And you're forging a bond with these people. Like I said, Heather will never, ever say to you, Chris, are you okay, honey? You okay? She starts a mantra, you got this. You got this. The worse you feel, the more focused she is, the more focused Peter Marcus is. Every time you pull in, and they set you back off. How do you pee when you're paddling and you can't stop? You can't stop to pee. You don't want to pee and sit in it because it burns. You use a catheter. That's what that is there. You can't stop. So you're paddling back to the bottom of San Juan Island, and as you get in this area here, you've been puking and trying to replace it, trying to keep it going. You're starting to just feel, imagine how your brain is just getting foggy and everything else. And now your stomach is just full of, it can't take it. It's come out this end, and all of a sudden, time to go number 2, but you can't stop, honey. So you're paddling, and you're paddling. It's everything you can do to avoid doing it, but you can't, and you just fill up your seat and your pants. With your own crap. And you finish that lap so the judges can sign off on it, and you run up to the shower at the showers at Lake Padden and rinse off as quick as you can, and your crew helps you change clothes. It's disgusting. You get back in your boat and you keep going. And you keep going. And by this area in here, it's getting dark. By the time you're south of Orcas Island here, it's dark. And you've lost every essential fluid that you need, all the good stuff you've been eating, drinking. Your brain's foggy, so you start asking for caffeine from your crew. And you get some caffeine on this lap, and then you go a couple more laps, and you ask for some more caffeine. And you're really, it's those compounding errors are starting to take hold now. And you're about to go into a state of total caffeine psychosis, because you got too much of it in your system and not enough other good stuff. So you're a vegetable. People on shore start thinking about calling the ambulance at this point because you can't really stand on your own. But you keep going, and your crew is there, and there's 100 people on shore there just for you, and your own kids are there, awake through the night, watching what you're doing, and you get back in your boat no matter what, because this is about a promise that you made to your mom, and that's all that matters. And you cruise all the way back, and you pull into Bellingham where you started. Now you've been to Victoria, and you've been back. Back to Bellingham. And you can't feed yourself anymore, so your friends are feeding you. And they say, Chris, I need you to buck up. I need you to focus. This is to keep a promise to your mom, right? We just need you to go back to Victoria. Victoria, Bellingham. All you got to do is go back to Victoria. So here's the thing, that tippy unicycle stable surf ski, you're not keeping it together very well anymore. You're wigged out on caffeine, you can't think straight, there's a little tiny part of you that can still think. But in this area here, you fall out of the boat. It flips over and you're in the water. And for the first moment in 7 years, you feel this flash of doubt that you might not do this. Never once have you thought that you weren't going to do this once you started, until that moment. And it hits you. But the water wakes you up, it shocks you back awake, and you've got people with you. You got DJ Jacobson over here, and he says, Brandon, you got this. Brandon, you got plenty of time, you got this. Just swim over to your boat. You got Michael Medler over here, and they're your friends, and they're in the water swimming with you, and that's all you need to know. Just get back to my boat. I trust what they're telling me, and you get back in, and you keep going. You keep going. And you get all the way to here, and somewhere in here, you fall out again, and you have no memory of it. But you must have gotten back in your boat and kept going. And then you make this final crossing. You've done that additional 28 laps after you got to Bellingham, and you pull back into Victoria. And now there's less than an hour left. And now, for those of you who've done the Ski to Sea course, now all you got to do is go out and do the Ski to Sea course. You've been to Victoria, Bellingham, back to Victoria, just throw down 5 more miles. Because you're not even in the realm of setting the world record yet. This has all been just to get within striking distance. The paramedics are called. There's an ambulance waiting on the side because everybody there sees an emergency case out on the water. How is this guy not in the hospital already? So they're there waiting to haul you off as soon as you stop. You are in so much pain. But you put it in a bottle, and you put it over here because it's about your mom. It's about keeping a promise. And your brothers are there, and your wife is there, and your kids are there, and none of them has ever let on anything except, you got this. Brandon, you got this. And you do. You just got to keep going. And you need a rest. You need a rest. And so you are totally conscious in this picture, but you need to just let go for 5 seconds. And there's one little spark inside this bowl of clam chowder that was once your brain that is counting down, and it hears that red digital clock, and it goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you snap your head forward, and you look at all the people around you. And Peter grips you by the hand and he says, you got this. And you think about why you're doing it and the women in your life and the inspiration for everything you do. And you get back in the boat one more time and you paddle away. And now you're within 100 yards of passing the mark that breaks the Guinness World Record for distance. But you are done, and you can't keep it upright anymore. You're 100 yards away, and you fall out of the boat for the last time. Your core muscles are so shot because that chafe on your back, all you want to do is hold that off the back of the boat. So you try to do a sit-up, and you've been doing that for 8 hours, and you just can't hold it anymore. And you're out of the boat one last time. And by this time, you've got a posse of other paddlers tracking along with you. And they pull in beside you. And it's the same mantra. Brandon, you've got time. Just get back in the boat. Just kick over to it. Get back in the boat. You don't even have to pull your legs up. You leave your legs out of a surf ski, and they're like training wheels. But you don't make any speed. So slowly you get back in, and you pull your legs up. And you're not even thinking. It's just happening automatically. And you take a few strokes, and pretty soon you're making it towards that horn. And all of a sudden, you hear that horn. And you've broke the world record. And then you have 20 more minutes to make a little more distance. I could never have predicted the experience that this quest that started back in 2006 would end up involving, or the people that it would end up involving, or any of it. But it is such, I'm so blessed to have had this experience, and I consider this night to be part of it, part of this story, and somehow it's going to keep going because it's so rich to me. I can't think about this story without, I can't look at the slides, I can't write about it without just feeling that love for my mom and for the community of people who would support me through such a stunt, such a selfish stunt like this. That number belongs to every single person who was at Lake Padden and who was there in 2006, and all of you. That's one guy on point, but it's a whole room full of people here tonight and everything else who made it happen. And I appreciate every one of you for coming and listening to this tonight. Thank you very much. You got a question, Hayden? That's my son, Hayden, right there. Come here, buddy. Okay, bud. All right. Does anybody have any questions about the world record paddle? Yes, ma'am. I was not wearing a hat during a sun hat, you mean? You think that was part of my demise? She says I wasn't wearing a sun hat. Yeah, good point. Maybe. Someone asked me earlier, why didn't you plan it better? Why didn't you have your food planned out better? Because my personality type is such that I get halfway there and then I just want to do it. And I should have had a sun hat. I still have a tan line from August 20th of last year. It's still there. So anyway, yes, sir. My theory of why I had so much problems with my electrolytes. Number one, I tested the exact same mix 3 weeks earlier on a 10-hour paddle, and it worked perfect. Exactly. It was the same weather and everything. So 3 hours into this one, I started cramping already. My theory, though, why I've done a lot of ultra racing in the past and never had a problem with any of this, but a couple years ago I went gluten-free, and I immediately dropped about 12 pounds. And in my mind, the inflammation that I dropped is water weight. So I've always had this sort of camel's hump reserve, and I don't have that anymore. I didn't at the time, a little bit now. But I immediately ran out of, there was no buffer. So I just started, I got off. I didn't mix nearly enough. I wasn't drinking enough water with the product I was using, and so it started pulling water from my tissue. And the crazy thing was, when I got into the ambulance and they plugged an IV in my arm, within an hour I was completely back to good. It's all it took. I was in the hospital for 3 days, but that was more just precautionary, you know.
What was the name of the electrolyte you used?
Hammer, Heed, and Perpetuum. The company's called Hammer, and the product's called Heed, and there's another one called Perpetuum. Yeah, and they're phenomenal. I use them for shorter races all the time. It's rocket fuel. It's amazing.
Buy it locally?
Yep. Yeah, Click's running. I think that's where I bought it. Yeah, it's amazing stuff. Jazzy. My daughter Jazzy has a question. Mama, can you help her? Okay. Did you have a question? Hey, Tracy. She said, if somebody beats you, are you going to do it again? The guy who beat me, he's a racer. I mean, I call us friends or whatever. I don't really care for the guy that much, but to be honest, he knew what we were doing. And to me, you make a courtesy call and say, hey, it's a new number. I would have done that for him. But anyway, I was not 1 hour in the hospital after this one. And I was on my iPhone, and there's an email from him saying, hey, I heard about what you did. I'm going in a month. And so he went up to Montana, and he raced another guy. The other guy was setting a world record for, both of them held world records. The other guy was in a pedal-driven boat, and they were racing each other, and they got blown off the water, or too cold or something like that. They didn't make it. So he flew down to San Diego to a marina, oval in a marina, and he paddled 154 miles. And I don't think it's been certified by Guinness yet, but I'm not gonna chase. This was what I wanted to do. Yeah, and I got kids now. I got a family. I've got other dreams. I don't need to chase after this, and it's hard on the body, you know.
How do you train for this? You said you did a 10-hour
Yeah.
pilot. Did you do anything like slowly work up to it, or you just went from 10 to 24?
I was in pretty good shape going into it. I decided to do it in June. So I made my decision in June to ramp up for it. Did y'all hear his question? How did I train for it other than the 10-hour piece? So 3 days a week, I would go to Lake Padden in the morning. I'd get up at 3:30, be on the water at 4:30, and do 3 to 4 hours, 2 or 3 days a week. And that just built an awesome base. Give you an example of how fit I got. I do a workout called the Hour of Power in race season. I try to hold about a 7.8 speed for 1 hour, 60 minutes in my surf ski. And it's different for every paddler, but that's my ski to sea race speed is 8.1. So I'm trying to hold almost race pace for 1 hour. In July, I'd been training, and I did a 3-hour paddle on Lake Padden, not even really pushing, and my average was 7.6 after 3 hours. So I had become just a machine. I went out on a Wednesday night course, which is a 3.5 mile, and paddled a PR time by 20 seconds. So this was just crazy good training. I'm going to do it again this year, just for ski to sea and stuff. But the 3-hour pieces are awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming, folks. I love sharing my story with you. Thanks, Todd. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Enjoy your evening. Looking forward to a great year ahead. See you next year.